Blessed be the name of the Lord. I think we have it. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it. They are safe. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it. They are saved. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord Most High. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord Most High. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it. They are saved. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it. They are saved. Do I need to make it? Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord Most High. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord Most High. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord Most High. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord Most Oh yeah.
That one for a while.
I know, it was like I'm flipping pages, it's like I just jumped on, okay. And Lord, we want to bless your name today for all you have done, for all you are doing, for your being with us and among us, as small as we are. And Lord, I thank you that in this community you are at work. And Lord, I know that there's a lot of struggle going on, and a lot of different people are going through some really hard things. And I just ask, Lord God, that you would help us, give us the strength and the endurance to run the race you've set before us, that we may bless your name, because you are our tower of strength, and you are the one who sustains us. And Father, I just ask that you would sustain us today as we worship you. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen and amen. Let's do God of Restoration. Haven't done it for a while. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing. in his wings. To the God of restoration, bring us heed. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing, the only God who heals. For you are holy. As for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. As for me and my house, we'll serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. Choose this day whom you will serve. 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 But as for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord. We will serve you, Lord. We will not bow to the gods of men. We will not bow to the gods of men. We'll worship the God of Israel. We will not bow to the gods of men. We will not bow to the gods of men. We'll worship the God of Israel. As for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. You are holy, holy. There is no one like you. Kadosh, Kadosh Ata, Inkamoka Adonai. Kadosh, Kadosh Ata, Inkamoka Adonai. But as for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. We will worship the God of Israel. We will worship the God of Israel. Craig, are you okay to blow the shofar today, you think?
I think so.
Okay. He was working on some stuff and he pulled a rib slightly out of place, which has now caused a muscle issue, and so he's been in a lot of pain the last couple days. And yeah.
Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah, so Monday chiropractor, right? And Joy, are you up to doing the Shema? Oh yeah, it's right there. It's in the book. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'shmoach kol shofar. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar. Janie is not here. We do not have the candles ready. She has been sick, so let's be praying for her healing, her well-being, that this illness that has been a problem to her will go away quickly.
Yes, and
My coworker that I told you about almost a year ago that they were threatening half her job. She got half my job. That was an answer to prayer. She just lost it. Just lost it. And she's asking for prayer. She doesn't care if you know her name this time. Her name is Christine Carter. Darkness.
Tonight's a night that normally For His Glory Apostolic Training Center would be having a night of worship, but with Janie sick and Tammy is also not feeling well, and so they're postponing it. That won't be tonight. This is one of the songs that they do that I absolutely love. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper. That's what God is. That is exactly who God is. It's the message of the song, that God is the waymaker. He is the miracle worker. He is the promise keeper. And every bit of that fits in with what our reading is today. Vayetze, which means he went out or he left. And it says Yaakov went out from Beersheba. And I'm going to have Craig start with Genesis 28, verse 10 through 29, verse 8.
Then Jacob departed from Beersheba and went toward Haran. He came to a certain place and spent the night there, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of the place and put it under his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream, and behold, a ladder was set upon the earth, with its top reaching to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will also be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and in your descendants shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. He was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured out oil on its top. He called the name of that place Bethel. However, previously the name of that city had been Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take, and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God. This stone which I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me I will surely give 1/10 to you. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the sons of the east. He looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it, for from that well they watered the flocks. Now the stone on the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, they would then roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where are you from? And they said, We are from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said to them, Is it well with him? And they said, It is well. And here is Rachel his daughter coming with the sheep. He said, Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered. Water the sheep and go pasture them. But they said, We cannot, until all the flocks are gathered, and they roll the stone from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep.
Bob is going to read chapter 29. Going to continue with the story. We're going to read the whole story today. 29:9 and through 34, through the end of chapter 30. 34. Okay, halfway through.
While he was still speaking, with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob went and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Then he related to Laban all these things. Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh," and he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, you should therefore serve me for nothing. Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Then Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than give her to another man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her." Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and Jacob went in to her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came about in the morning that behold, it was Leah, and he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served with you? Why then have you deceived me?" But Laban said, "It is not the practice of our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also for the service which you shall serve with me for another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel, his wife. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maid. So Jacob went to Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah, he served with Laban for another 7 years. Now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son and named him Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. Then she conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me a son also. So she named him Simeon. She conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have bore him 3 sons. Therefore he was named Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she named him Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Now then Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, and she was jealous of her sister. And she said to Jacob, give me children, or else I die. Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? She said, here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children. So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me and has indeed heard my voice and has given me a son. Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with mighty wrestling I have wrestled with my sister, and I have indeed prevailed. And she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, how fortunate. So she named him Gad. And Leah made Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, happy am I, for women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. Now in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, it is a small matter for you to take my husband, and would you take my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, therefore he may lie with you tonight and return for your son mandrakes. When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, then Leah went to meet him and said, you must come in with me, for I surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that night. God gave heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, God has given me my wages because I gave my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore a sixth son to Jacob. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have bore him six sons. So she named him Zebulun. After she bore a daughter and named her Dinah, then God remembered Rachel and gave heed to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. She named him Joseph, saying, may the Lord give me another son. Now it came about when Rachel had bore Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me depart, for you yourself know my service which I have rendered to you. But Laban said to him, if now it pleases you, stay with me. I have divined that the Lord has blessed me on your account. He continued, name me your wages, and I will give it. But he said to him, you yourself know how I have served you, and how your cattle have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased to a multitude, and the Lord has blessed you whatever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall give me anything. If you will do this one thing for me, I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from there every speckled and spotted sheep and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come concerning my wages. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen. Laban said, good, let it be according to your word.
Craig is going to read Genesis 35 through 31:22. Continuing the story of Yaakov.
So he removed on that day the striped and spotted male goats and all the speckled and spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and all the black ones among the sheep, and gave them into the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white which was in the rods. He set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the gutters, even in the watering troughs, where the flocks came to drink, and they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. And he put his own herds apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Moreover, whenever the stronger of the flock were mating, Jacob would place the rods in the sight of the flock in the gutters, so that they might mate by the rods. But when the flock was feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. So the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father he has made all his wealth. Jacob saw the attitude of Laban. Jacob saw the attitude of Laban, and behold, it was not friendly toward him as formerly. Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field, and said to them, I see your father's attitude, that it is not friendly toward me as formerly, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, God did not allow him to hurt me. If he spoke thus, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flock brought forth speckled. And if he spoke thus, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock brought forth striped. Thus God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. And it came about at the time when the flock were mating, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the male goats which were mating were striped, speckled, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, Here I am. He said, Lift up now your eyes and see that all the male goats which are mating are striped, speckled, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now rise, leave this land, and return to the land of your birth. Rachel and Leah said to him, Do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and has also entirely consumed our purchase price. Surely all the wealth which God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. Then Jacob arose and put his children and his wives upon camels, and he drove away all his livestock and all his property which he had gathered, his acquired livestock which he had gathered in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he was fleeing. So he fled with all that he had, and he arose and crossed the Euphrates River, and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told by Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob had fled, then he took his kinsman with him, and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead.
Joy, would you come and finish the story for us? Genesis 31:23 through 32:2.
(31:23).
Yes.
Then he took his kinsman with him and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream of the night and said to him, "Be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad." Laban caught up with Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done by deceiving me in carrying away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and deceive me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with joy and with songs and timbrel and with lyre, and did not allow me to kiss my sons and daughters? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob.' Now you have indeed gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Then Jacob replied to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. The one with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings, and take it for yourself." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle, and she sat on them. And Laban felt through all the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is upon me." So he searched, but did not find the household idols. Then Jacob became angry and contended with Laban. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Though you have felt through all my goods, what have you found? Of all your household goods, set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may be decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn of beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. You required it of my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, so he rendered judgment last night." Then Laban replied to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. What can I do this day to these my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? So now you come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." Then Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." So they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Now Laban called it Jegar-sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me this day." Therefore it was named Galeed and Mizpah, for he said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another." If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me for harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. Now, as Jacob went on his way, the angels of God met him. Jacob said when he saw them, this is God's camp. So he named that place Mahanaim.
The HAFTARAH portion that's connected with that in the readings is out of Hosea 12:13, and Chris is going to read a couple selections from it. Hosea 12:13 through 13:6, and then 14:2 through 10 to the end of the chapter. Or Hosea 12 in the Christian Bible. The markings are a little different.
And this one starts in 13 now?
Begins with Yaakov fled, or Jacob fled to the land.
Okay, so 12 in this one. Okay, now Jacob fled to the land of Aram, and Israel worked for a wife. And for a wife he kept sheep. But by a prophet the Lord brought Israel from Egypt, and by a prophet he was kept. Ephraim was provoked to bitter anger. So his Lord will leave his blood guilt on him, and bring back his reproach to him. When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He exalted himself in Israel, but through Baal he did wrong and died. And now they sin more and more, and make for themselves molten images, idols skillfully made from their silver, all of them the work of craftsmen. They say of them, let the men who sacrifice kiss the calves. Therefore they will be like the morning cloud, and like dew, which soon disappears. Like chaff which is blown away from the threshing floor, and like smoke from a chimney. Yet I have been the Lord your God since the land of Egypt, and you were not to know any God except me, for there is no Savior besides me. I cared for you in the wilderness, in the land of Egypt. As they had their pasture, they became satisfied, and being satisfied, their heart became proud. Therefore, they forgot me. And then 14, starting in 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Return, O Lord, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all iniquity, and receive us graciously, that we may present the fruit of our lips. Assyria will not save us. We will not ride on horses, nor will we say again, our God, to the work of our hands. And in you the orphan finds mercy. I will heal their apostasy. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned away from them. I will be like the dew to Israel. He will blossom like the lily, and he will take root like the cedars of Lebanon. The shoots will sprout, and his beauty will be like the olive tree, and his fragrance like the cedars of Lebanon. Those who live in his shadow will rise again. They will blossom like the vine. His renown will be like the wine of Lebanon. O Ephraim, what more have I to do with idols? It is I who answer and look after you. I am like a luxuriant cypress. From me comes your fruit. Whoever is wise, let him understand these things. Whoever is discerning, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the righteous will walk in them, but the transgressors will stumble in them.
Our reading from the Apostolic Writings is in the first chapter of the book of John, the Gospel of John. Starting with verse 41 to the end of the chapter. It says, the first thing he did was to find Simon and tell him, we have found the Messiah. The word means the one who has been anointed. He took him to Yeshua. Looking at him, Yeshua said, you are Simon Bar-Jonah. You will be known as Kepha. That name means rock. The next day, having decided to leave for the Galilee, Yeshua found Philip and said, follow me. Philip was from Bethsaida, this town where Andrew and Kepha, or Peter, lived. Philip found Nathanael and told him, we have found the one that Moses wrote about in the Torah, also the prophets. It is Yeshua ben Yosef from Nazareth. Nathanael answered him, Nazareth? Can anything good come from there? Come and see, Philip said to him. Yeshua saw Nathanael coming towards him and remarked about him, here is a true son of Israel. Nothing false is in him. Nathanael said, how do you know me? Yeshua answered, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael said, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Yeshua answered, you believe all this because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than that. And then he said, yes, indeed, I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God going up and coming down upon the Son of Man. Great promise by Yeshua. I don't know why, but Psalm 46. It's kind of a... It's one I wrote a long time ago, but we haven't done it hardly much. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms they will fall, but God will be my refuge and strength. When the mighty ones are shaken, on his name I will call, and God will be my refuge and strength. And I will never need to be afraid, for the earth give way around me, though the waters roar surround me. I know my God is able, I know my God is strong, and I will trust him through the night and all day long. Nations are in uproar, nations are in uproar, kingdoms they will fall, but God will be my refuge and strength. When the mighty ones are shaken, on his name I will call, and God will be my refuge and strength. And I will never need to be afraid. I will never need to be afraid, though the earth give way around me, though the waters roar surround me. I know my God is able, I know my God is strong, and I will trust him through the night and all day long. There's a river, and oh, there is a river whose streams will make me glad, for the Holy One is with me, his Spirit dwells within me. I know he will sustain me, I believe his word is true, and he's promised that he'll always bring me through. Nations are in uproar, nations are in uproar, kingdoms they will fall, but God will be my refuge and strength. When the mighty ones are shaken, on his name I will call, and God will be my refuge and strength. never need to be afraid. I will never need to be afraid. Though the earth give way around me, though the waters roar surround me, I know my God is able, I know my God is strong. I will trust him through the night and all day long, and I will never need to be afraid. Though the earth give way around me, though the waters roar surround me, I know my God is able, I know my God is strong. I will trust him through the night and all day long.
When did you write that?
Huh?
When did you write that?
I wrote that in 2008.
Okay, that's very prophetic.
Right out of Psalm 46. As I was studying through the Psalms and looking for music and looking for whatever. But for some reason the song, as I was flipping through the book, kind of jumped out at me, recognizing that, you know, it doesn't always look easy. It doesn't always look easy. When Yeshua comes and he's calling his disciples and he sees Nathanael. Where's Nathanael? Hiding under a fig tree. Now there was a way in which the fig trees grow in Israel, and they kind of like a weeping willow. I don't know if you ever had a fort under a tree when you were a kid.
That would be cool.
Huh?
That would be cool.
It is cool, and it is
Forts
cool.
and trees.
And I used to find when we went to camp in Prescott Pines, there were some trees that had grown, kind of the branches were big and they kind of dropped down around, and you could find, if you could get in between two branches, you could get in the middle, and there would be this dry area, even in the rain, even in nice and dry, and you could sit there and nobody knew you were there.
Mine was in rhododendrons.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
It was cool.
So I used to love being able to hide and study the word and hide and pray and just hide and write poetry and hide and read a good book, you know?
Oh, man.
I kind of joked about the idea that when I write my autobiography, it's going to say I traveled the world in my father's attic. Because I used to climb up in the attic and read all these books about things all over the world, and I literally would climb up in the attic, and then I would pull, you know, it had one of those ladders that came down and you could pull it up, you know, and I would sit up there with my flashlight and I would read and read and read and read, and I'd be there for hours. Sometimes I think, did my mother, as an adult I wonder, did my mother know for sure that's where I was? Because, you know, I'd be up there for hours. But there's this place that Yeshua said, I saw you when you were hiding under that fig tree, Nathanael. I saw where you were. God sees us where we are. Yeshua sees us where we are. When he looked at Israel out of Egypt and he brought them from Egypt out, in Hosea it tells us that he brought them out with nothing but with a prophet, with the prophetic word and a prophet. He brought them out. He led them through the wilderness. He kept them fed. But when they got into their own land and started doing the work to provide for themselves the way we're supposed to do, they forgot that it was God who gives the increase. You know, a farmer can plant all he wants. If God doesn't give the increase, there's no crop. The crop has to come from God. The increase comes from God. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that. God says, return to me. Don't stumble anymore. Bring your words. Bring your words and bring your actions. Ask for God's forgiveness, but change your actions. Don't look to these other gods anymore. Don't look at other things. Look to me. I'm your provider. I am the one who brought you up. I am your God. He saw Israel. He saw Ephraim. He saw the differences. He saw what was going on. He saw all of that. And he sent prophets to them to say, hey, guys, judgment is coming because you have not honored me. You've walked out from under my blessing. When we walk out from under the blessing of God, judgment happens. In our story, the thing that jumped out at me this week, the more I read it, the more I saw this one thing. Just one thing. Jacob left his father's house with nothing. Right? He left with nothing. He had his cloak that he used to cushion himself on the rock, and he fell asleep, and God gave him a dream. And he saw the ladder going up, and I mean, there are songs about that, we are climbing Jacob's ladder, right? The whole idea that God, there's this connection between heaven and earth. And I've heard all kinds of crazy things preached on this subject. I got to tell you, it's been from things like, Jacob didn't realize that the ladder was with him all the time, to the and I'm like, wait a minute. He's in a specific place for a specific purpose, and God chose that place to show him this is where the angels of God ascend and descend. It had nothing to do with Jacob. It had everything to do with God and his provision. And that's why he names the place. I've actually heard preachers say that, if he had realized it, he took that blessing with him everywhere he went. Well, maybe, but not in the same way. Jacob said to God, when you are my God. This is the house of God. This is the place of God. This place here is where God's anointing, where God's authority is. And in this place, I will come back to worship you. If. Did you catch the if? Jacob goes out with nothing. And he makes a bargain with God. And the thing that gets me is that God honored it. God honored that. I am Adonai, the God of Abraham, your grandfather, the God of Isaac, your father. The land that you are lying on, I'm going to give to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of the dust on the earth. You will expand to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south. By you and your descendants, all the families of the earth will be blessed. I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go. I will bring you back into this land because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised. Is that conditional upon Jacob? Does God give Jacob a condition on there? No, he says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. Period. I will do this. Jacob woke up and said, truly the Lord is in this place. I didn't even know it. I didn't recognize it. This place is awesome. This has to be the house of God, the gate of heaven. Now, some Jewish commentaries will say this is the very place that Isaac had been offered on the altar. Some will say this is the very place that the temple is built later. So, I mean, there's all kinds of interesting parallels and connections, and some will say, well, in the land, it's over here, and it's over here. And there's all these different ideas about where this place is. But what I want us to recognize right now, regardless of what the actual location was, when Jacob left with nothing, God met him. He left out of obedience. He left with nothing, and God met him. And God made a promise to him. And Jacob responded to that promise and said, surely, God, if you will do these things, then when I come back, you will be my God. Doesn't say you are my God. I find that interesting. He took a vow. If God will be with me and will guard me in this road that I'm traveling, give me bread to eat and clothes to wear so that I return to my father's house in peace, then Adonai will be my God. You mean he's not already? The stone that I've set up as a standing stone will be God's house, and of everything you give me, I will faithfully return 1/10 to you. Okay, tithe. It predates the law. It predates Moses. So those people that tell you that the tithe is, tithe is part of the commandments of Moses, no, it predates it. Abraham earlier had given a tenth, a tithe, to Melchizedek. A tenth here, it's a standard, it was a standard thing. When you wanted to honor, you gave a tenth. And continuing his journey, he came to the land of the people of the east. Now, I know that Tammy, when she talked to you, she talked about the well that the servant found Rebecca at. She talked about that word, that well means a spring. It's not a deep dug well necessarily. It's a spring where the water bubbles up. This is the same well. It's the same well. There's a place where they went to water their sheep. There's a stone over the top of it that kind of caps it. So it's capped, but it's a spring where when you take the cap off, the water comes out. You don't have to dig for it. You're not having to throw the bucket down in it. It simply was capped. It's the same type of thing. It's the same well, I believe. It's the same word in Hebrew. A natural spring. And so he comes to that spring where his mother was found, and he finds himself his own wife. He left with nothing. He goes, he meets a wife, he makes a vow, he meets his wife, he gets all this stuff, and God blesses him tremendously. But it wasn't always easy. He worked for that blessing. He worked for that blessing. And yet, he continued to acknowledge that it was God who was blessing him. Even though he worked. Even though he manipulated things or seemed to. The whole story about the speckled, the branches and all of that stuff. It seems as if he's trying to manipulate things for his own benefit, but even in doing all of that, he still, in the long run, acknowledges the blessing is from God. He left with nothing. He returns with everything. When he left, he made a vow to God that he would return if God blessed him. As he leaves, he makes a vow to Laban. I will not come back. I will not come back. Sometimes when we leave and we obey God, we have to remember there's a second part to that. We go where God directs us, but there's times also that God says, okay, now it's time to move. It's time to move. It's time to move. Don't go back. And that's what happens here. He left with nothing. He returns with everything. He leaves. He makes a vow to God, says, I will return. When he returns, he makes a vow to the world he is leaving. He says, I'm not coming back here for any harm. I'm going to go and honor my God. I'm going to go and honor my God. And when he does that, God meets him. God meets him. And he recognizes, again, the angels of God. Just as he did when he first left. This whole time he's out and about, he's doing all these things, he's working hard. I mean, he says that Laban changed his wages, how many times? 10 times? He worked hard for the blessing of God. And he didn't leave until God said he was to leave. He did not move until God said to move. He didn't leave until God said to leave. He left his mother's house with nothing. He returns with everything. The story of the gods, the household gods, it's kind of an interesting little twist that I heard this last couple of weeks, listening to what is his name? He's working on a big series about the house of God that's just phenomenal. We heard him at conference this last summer. Anyway, he was talking about this whole thing about the household gods. And sometimes, and I've read commentaries that really, really look down on Rachel because she stole the gods. And there's all kinds of fanciful ideas about why she would steal Laban's household gods. What was she doing? What was she thinking? Is she planning on worshiping these gods? And it was interesting as I was listening. In the ancient Near East, each house had their own representation of the gods that were of their house and over their house. And those gods represented their inheritance. Those gods represented their inheritance. When a wife marries and goes into another household, she goes to the husband's gods. She's going to be receiving the inheritance her husband has earned. Her husband's inheritance now falls to her. And the prior inheritance of her father's house goes to her brothers. When Rachel stole the household gods, took them with her, she was saying something profound that had nothing to do with idolatry. It had everything to do with the idea that my father's inheritance has passed to my husband. I'm taking these to represent that. Laban's inheritance, the inheritance of her father, and we see it in the sheep and in the goats and in the wealth and all of that stuff. The inheritance that had been given to Laban transfers over, right, to Jacob. And when she took the gods, that's what she was showing. That in a very real sense, the inheritance that had been given to the father has transferred back. It's a really different concept, isn't it? It's not one I'd ever heard before. And I thought, sometimes when we read these things, we read it out of the context of the culture. We don't always understand it. Jacob knew it was time to leave when he started noticing Laban's sons complaining that what our father had seems to be going to Jacob. Their inheritance was being lost. Part of the reason I believe their inheritance was being lost was because Laban was not honoring the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's part of the relative. He's part of the factor. He could be doing that. He could have shifted. He could have done that. But he didn't. And God is showing in all of this, look, I called Abraham out of here. I called your family out of here. You should be following them. All the nations of the earth are to be blessed by the sons of Jacob, sons and daughters of Jacob. All the nations of the earth were to be blessed by the sons and daughters of Abraham. All the nations. That meant Laban could have chosen blessing. But he didn't. Instead, the inheritance that had been his through his father, who is Abraham's brother, they're all related, ends up being taken from him and given to Jacob. And when they left and Rachel stole the household gods, she was showing that she saw that the inheritance has been transferred. The inheritance belongs to the one who honors God. God honors Jacob because Jacob honors God. God honors Jacob because he honors God. God honored Israel because she honored God. When she stopped honoring God as a nation, the blessings stopped over Israel. When Ephraim, the northern kingdom, stopped honoring God as a nation, set up their own days of worship, their own times, their own gods, literally put up their own altar in their own courtyard away from Jerusalem. Everyone that wants to be of the house of Ephraim, I warn you, be careful. Ephraim did some really wrong things. Ephraim as a group worshipped and went after a different God, said we are better than Judah and we will do this our way. And God judged Ephraim for that. As we return to the roots of the faith of Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, let's not make the same mistakes. Let's return with honoring to Judah. Let's return recognizing Jerusalem. Let's return recognizing the blessing of God, not creating our own, not redesigning it all, not trying to set it all up our way. To me, that it just, it makes no sense to me. If you wanted to do that, you might as well stay in the church and keep honoring the church's holidays and holy days and all of that stuff. You might as well do that, because if you're going to set up your own calendar, you're doing the same thing. If you're going to deny the truth that God placed in Judah, you're doing the same thing. You are repeating what the nation of Ephraim did when Ephraim separated from Judah to begin with. So as we come back, let's get rid of that mistake. Return to Adonai our God. Our guilt has made us stumble. Take words, return to Adonai. Say, forgive our guilt, accept what is good. We will pay instead of bulls the offering of our lips. In other words, what we do and what we say must match. I'm not going to look at Asher to save me. We're not going to ride on horses. We're not going to call what we've made with our hands our gods. We're not going to set up our own days. We're not going to set up our own times. We're not going to do it our way. We are going to honor the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by honoring those who have held all of these things, generation after generation after generation after generation. This is a season, the month of Kislev. This is a season where all that is holy gets shaken, okay? We have in the church the big season of Christmas. We have in the Jewish nation the recognition that Jesus wouldn't have been born in December. That makes no sense. We have all of these things that happen in the church, standard church, that are honoring Christmas and in their minds honoring the birth of Yeshua. And we have a whole bunch of people that have come along and said, well, that's pagan, and 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 that's pagan. And yes, some of it has pagan roots, absolutely, okay? But what doesn't have pagan roots? We have anointing oil over there that we use sometimes when we pray for people, right? That has pagan roots. It's also found in the temple of the holy God of Israel, that there are specific oils that were used for specific things. It's also found in the temple and in the worship of the one true God. Does Hasatan create or make up anything? All he can do is pervert what God has established, because he is not creative. He can only take what God has done and pervert it. Does that mean I'm saying it's okay to set up Christmas trees? That's between you and God. It really is. The passage that's used most often against a Christmas tree is really talking about carving an idol. It's not talking about cutting down a tree and bringing it in and putting gold on it. It's talking about cutting down a tree, breaking its branches, cutting it down, designing it, shaping it into a form, dipping it in gold, and then saying, ha, this is my God. It's creating an idol. In fact, even in Judaism, there's huge argument as to whether or not a Jew can be in the same room with a Christmas tree, because some have said that the Christmas tree is the idol that is talked about in Jeremiah. But most rabbinical sources will say, no, it's not. The Christmas tree is not an idol. Nobody is bowing down to the Christmas tree. Nobody is worshiping the tree. Although there are times I wonder when we sing O Tannenbaum.
Yeah.
And the chorale is singing that one tomorrow in our concert in German. One of my least favorite songs.
Oh, in German though.
Huh?
In German.
Yeah, we're singing it in German and then a little in English. And it is beautiful. And it's done very well. And it's going to, the 4-part men's harmony in it is just gorgeous. But anyway, we are not worshiping a tree. And if you want to worship a tree, then you got a problem. But a Christmas tree is not an idol. Some of the things that have been said about all of this stuff come out of one book. Everyone goes back and quotes the one book by Lou White called Fossilized Customs. I have a copy of it if you want to read it. But I want you to know right now he has no historical documentation anywhere in his book. He cannot verify it. He cannot go back and prove any of it. And there are those in historical settings and in the universities and those who have studied out, like the worship of Mithra, who will tell you that Mithra didn't even rise up, was not a god that was being honored necessarily until after Constantine. It's like, what? And we've grown up our whole lives being told all of Christmas is pagan and from pagan roots, and the Catholic Church stole this pagan worship day of Mithra and has turned it into the... And you know, there may be some historical truth to that, but half of the stuff we've been told is not proven by the ancient documents. True historians who are digging in and trying to prove it can't. So why are we fighting so hard against something that we have no documentation or proof for? But I will tell you this right now, don't even tell a Wiccan this. Why? Because you know what? Even the pagans are so convinced that it was a pagan holiday that they will accuse you of trying to steal it again if you tell them, you know what, it really wasn't a big pagan holiday. Saturnalia is not on the 25th. That holiday was a few days before. It's on equinox. Right? So, but they are so convinced because it's Encyclopedia Britannica will tell you Christmas was a pagan holiday. Because that's what we have thought for years and years and years and years. But historians doing the research, getting out the documents, looking at the dates of when things happened, are finding it's not quite as historically proven as we've always thought. Rachel steals her father's gods, and we all think it's idolatry. Right? That's what I was taught. That's what it says. She stole her father's gods. Now, if she was stealing those gods to worship them, would she be sitting on them? Think about it. She'd have had to find a different place to hide them because that would have been extremely, extremely, extremely disrespectful in that culture. It would be like throwing a shoe at somebody, and you don't do that in an Arab culture. The sole of your foot or showing the sole of your foot to someone is an absolute insult. It is telling them that they are underneath your feet, you are in charge, and they are nothing but dirt. That's what it means. So to sit on them would have been extreme disrespect if she saw them as gods. But if she recognized them as a sign of inheritance and said, you know what? That inheritance doesn't belong to my brothers. That inheritance belongs to my husband. I'm taking the sign of inheritance, and I'm going to bring it to my brother, my husband.
She broke the power of her father's gods by removing them.
That's a possibility too. She obviously didn't think they meant anything in terms of having power over her, or she wouldn't have sat on them. But sometimes we see something and we see it a certain way and we see it that way so long that it's really hard to see anything different. We're coming up on Hanukkah in 2 weeks. It's already only 2 weeks away. And we are in conversation with Moshe over at the Messianic Synagogue, and with Tammy with the For His Glory Apostolic Training Center, and we're going to be doing a Hanukkah, the three of us together at the synagogue downtown. I think it's good for us to honor each other and show honor and work together on what we can work together on. I will not stand up and accuse any Christians of bad theology. I'm not going to stand up and accuse. I'm going to be singing with the chorale tomorrow on the stage at Ross Raglan. I'm going to be singing, "Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree." But it talks about what the meaning was that Martin Luther, who is the one who instituted the use of a Christmas tree in Germany, the first one to do it, what Martin Luther says about it, that the cutting it down is akin to God, Christ being sacrificed for us. There's all of these things. These things were meant to teach something, like a catechism teaches things. It wasn't even popular anyplace else for several generations, except in Germany, among the Lutherans, those who followed Martin Luther. Let's not attack those who follow Jesus. Let's not accuse them without understanding. Let's walk in love. How's that for an idea? Novel thought. Let's walk in love. Mason Clover, who's a part of the HR movement, the Hebrew Roots movement, and does music and teaches and is a pastor and all that stuff. And he's been posting all kinds of interesting things that have gotten him in so much trouble on Facebook, because he's come out and he said, guys, Christmas isn't as pagan as you think. He just flat out said, Christmas isn't pagan.
Share that with me.
Huh?
Share that with me, I want to see it.
And you should see the attack he's gotten. Everybody, people are quoting Encyclopedia Britannica, and he's going, yeah, but there's no sources for that. Go to Encyclopedia Britannica, read it, and it will say, it is thought that, it is thought that, it is thought that. Where are the historical documents? They aren't there. I've had people leave us because I allow the use of the name Jesus. Because they believe, and this is something he posted this week that someone else had posted, Jesus is the Antichrist. Jesus means Zeus, son of Zeus. That is the Antichrist. It does not. He is not the Antichrist. Jesus is the English translation of the Latin, which is a translation of the Greek, which is a translation of the Hebrew. It went through all these languages to get to Jesus. The letter J didn't even exist when the King James Bible was first translated, 1611. I can show you, I've got it. Got a copy of it. The letter G didn't exist. It's fairly new in the English language. Yeshua is the Hebrew name. Oh, and then they'll come up with all this other stuff.
Sometimes Christians are the meanest.
Huh?
Sometimes Christians are the meanest.
We are the meanest to each other. In the Hebrew Roots movement, yes. In the Messianic movement, yes. In the Christian world, yes. We tend to be the meanest to each other. And it should not be. Should not be. When Jacob left Laban's house, he made a promise he would not return and do harm to Laban or his family. Ever. That's where all of this is coming back to. Laban is like, the daughters are mine, the children are mine. Don't you do anything wrong to them. This all came from me, Jacob. Do you recognize that? Do not harm that which came from me. And Jacob promises he won't. Here's the witness. I'm not going to pass by this way to do you harm. You're not going to pass by this way to do me harm. Why do we keep crossing the barrier to do each other harm? Why do we do that? Why don't we recognize this all, everything? I mean, it all comes back to something I learned the very first year. Christianity, the church, is where I was born again. Represents my mother in faith. I have to honor her. Judaism is that place that has held on to the tenets, the rules, the regulations, the book, has held on to the truths of the hard word of God, has held on to the festivals, has held on to all of these things. Judaism has done that. In a sense, Judaism has provided all of this. It all came from there, right? And so Judaism is like our father, the provider, the wall, the protector. Why do we dishonor Judaism? Our father. Why do we dishonor the church? Our mother. Why can't we recognize that what we have has come from both? That's kind of what Laban is saying. These daughters were mine. Everything that's here, honor it. Treat it with respect. Treat God with respect. God knows where we've come from. He has seen us under the bushes. He's seen us under the trees. He has seen us hiding out, studying. He has seen us learning all this stuff in secret. He knows. And I believe he's going to honor that. Do I see it yet? No. How long did Jacob work for his 2 wives and all the flocks? It wasn't a short time. And it wasn't easy. He labored hard. He labored long. He gave his all, and God honored him. Let's labor long and hard. Let's honor God. I'm going to read the very last verse out of Hosea as a conclusion. Let the wise understand these things. Let the discerning know them. For the ways of the Lord are straight, and the righteous walk in them. But in them, sinners will stumble. Father, help us to walk righteously, not to stumble. Help us to walk in love. Help us to walk in honor. Help us to walk in respect. Help us to go after the blessings that you have promised us, but to do so with honor and respect and hard work that you have called us to do. Father, help us be bridge builders. And give us of your wisdom so that we can recognize, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Yes. Because Jesus was there for a time in his life. Born in Bethlehem, raised in Egypt and in Nazareth, and yet Son of Man, Son of God. You will bring good out of the darkest places. You will bring good out of the least. And I thank you for that. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord and our Savior. Amen. Joy, do you want to release us with the blessing? You had something?
This ministry bought this book, and they let me read it first, and I finally finished it. And talk about timing. Well, Yeshua may have been conceived at during Kislev. Probably.
I believe he was.
I mean, you add up the months. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the Oracle, really amazing book. So thank you for letting me use it. And while I was reading this one, I bought, I think, 3 others. Gave one to one of my sons who isn't walking with the Lord. Gave one to Emmanuel, my son who's in England with the Air Force, and he cannot tell us that he's, well, England's increasingly more Muslim, you know.
Yes, I know.
And he's been in danger more than once, but he can't talk about it. And I gave one to Lou, who is probably a Levite, if you look up his name. But anyway, okay, so did you did I tell you about when I went to see my family after my mother passed away, that I met an admiral in the Coast Guard and his wife? I didn't know who they were, you know, at first, but she wanted to know about the special blessing that the Jewish people pray. So I started singing this right there in the train station.
Awesome.
And she said, oh, I feel something. I feel something. I couldn't even get it all the way finished. I felt it too. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. So to sing this ancient prayer that goes way back is a privilege. Yivarekach Adonai v'yishmereka, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And we celebrate. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom.
Greg told me I need to let Janie know what she needs to get better is more cowbell.
Yeah.
So, I'll be sending that to her a little later.